Dan Perry's a political commentator. He's former head of Associated Press in Europe, Middle East and Africa. He's joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to talk to you, first of all, about the Israeli strikes on Yemen. This was in response, of course, to that attack we were talking about by the Houthis on Ben Gurion Airport. Given what we have seen so far about the way that Israel has carried out the attacks in Yemen, do you think that they are prepared to draw a line under it? Do you think it's proportional, or are we likely to see more?
Israel had to react because, from their perspective, the lucky attack on Ben Gurion, the fact that the missile fell very close to the terminal, could not be allowed to stand. Will this truly deter the Houthis? I rather doubt it, because they seem fairly close to undeterrable, such is the level of their fanaticism and their hatred of Israel and the West. Will Israel go further? I am not so sure. I think more likely Israel is hoping that the Americans and the British and other Western powers and maybe the Arab nations will go further. There's also talk potentially of the internationally recognized Yemeni government finally launching an attack on the Houthis, and I think Israel's sort of hoping all that will put pressure on them. But I'm not sure the Houthis are deterrable, short of being crushed. And of course, crushing the Houthis proved very difficult for the Saudi coalition, and it would require such damage to civilian infrastructure in Yemen that there is reluctance to go.
I want to talk to you about Israel's Security Cabinet decision to move ahead with expand the plan for the military occupation, military move into Gaza. Now, if I understand it correctly, Israel has long resisted having any sort of control over Gaza because logistically it is very, very difficult. Administratively, it is a drawdown on facilities. It just takes up an awful lot of time and an awful lot of personnel. What's your assessment of why the Israeli government is making this statement at this particular point?
It's for two reasons. One, they're simply not comfortable with any outcome that leaves Hamas in power in Gaza, and I think they have the backing of most Israelis on that. And as I said before on Al Jazeera, I suspect most Palestinians as well. The other, though, and probably the more urgent issue, is that Netanyahu has clearly decided to prioritize the survival of his coalition, and that requires prolonging the war, basically, because that is what the far right demands. And the far right, despite the costs that you mentioned, and I would add the devastating economic cost of administering the 2+ million people of Gaza amid an insurgency, they want to reoccupy Gaza. They want to resettle it with Jews, and they have reveries about compelling somehow a voluntary exodus of much of the Gaza population. This is very much opposed by the vast majority of Israelis who polls showed just yesterday believe that A, the move is political, B, that it will not help the hostages, and C, they just oppose it. That said, even though it's very easy to condemn the Israeli government for what looks like a highly cynical maneuver here, I would also add that all of this suffering could end if Hamas simply declared publicly that it is willing to lay down its arms and hand over to the Palestinian Authority. If they did that, then despite the fact that Netanyahu's government opposes also the Palestinian Authority, the pressure on Israel would be so great that I think it would be irresistible in a democratic country. So, it's not just Israel's fault. The insistence on Hamas, on prolonging this, is something I think the Arab countries might want to try to deal with. And I suspect that during Trump's trip, in addition to all the other issues on the plate, there will be discussion about, amping up the Egypt-led Arab League plan for a different day after plan in Gaza. And if that is done, and if that plan is improved to the point that it includes a very serious pressure by the Arab world on Hamas to disarm, I think the pressure in turn on Netanyahu to rethink this cataclysmic idea of reoccupying Gaza forevermore would be very great indeed.
It is worth pointing out that Hamas has already said that it will step aside from any controlling element with regard to Gaza in the event of a ceasefire. And it is Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition which has refused to have anything to do with any involvement by the Palestinian Authority.
Rob, all that is true. That is true. However, in Israel about leaving Hamas in power, but sort of along the sidelines risks a Hezbollah-like scenario, antebellum Hezbollah-like scenario, where they're the real power, even though there's some pretense otherwise. They're not willing to put up with that. But of course, you're right. The fact that Netanyahu's government refuses to countenance the PA taking over is part of the absurdity, and I've condemned it more than once.
One of the things that our correspondent, Hind Qadri, was pointing out to us when the plan initially came out was that people in Gaza were telling her that they have absolutely no intention of leaving Gaza, that Israel appears to be doing that and putting forward this plan on the assumption that everything is going to go very smoothly and going to go their way. But the reaction within Gaza, at least, seems to be, no, as soon as we get humanitarian aid, we are going to go back to our homes and we are going to stand our ground, we're going to fight. This is not going to be an easy process for Israel. And I wanted to ask you about the impact of the trip that Donald Trump is going to be making to the region. Do you think that is going to have some sort of impact on, or at least some sort of pressure on Israel in order to move forward with talks on a ceasefire and also the introduction of humanitarian aid?
As I said, absolutely. If Trump decides to veto the Israeli plan, it won't happen, essentially. It's only happening because of an implied green light by Trump. Would Trump veto it? I doubt it, without some sort of an improved Arab League plan to engineer a different day after in Gaza, which I think would involve some version of disarming of Hamas in addition to what's been discussed so far, a takeover of Gaza by the PA, perhaps an improved and reformed version thereof, but primarily to calm down Israeli fears. It would need to involve, I think, significant Arab League Arab military assistance to the PA and policing and controlling Gaza, and some version of Hamas disarmament, because they're not going to put up with Hamas being an armed militia continuing to threaten them and occasionally firing rockets at them and so forth. So beyond the issue of giving up the hostages, I think Hamas has to step aside in some manner that is convincing, and I know this won't happen without monumental and crushing pressure from the Arab world. We've seen some progress in that direction. If that direction is completed, if that journey by the Arab world towards a complete and total delegitimization of Hamas in Gaza, Hamas governance in Gaza, is actually done on Trump's trip, I do expect Trump to present this to Israel as something close to a fait accompli, and then this plan that we're discussing here probably won't happen.
Dan, we appreciate it, and for you giving us the benefit of your thoughts on this. Dan Perry, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you.